Good morning. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing well, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Let's start with some general questions. Could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us why you're interested in welding as a career?
Of course. My name is James Anderson, and I recently completed my welding training at XYZ Institute of Technology in California. I've always had a strong interest in hands-on work, and welding seemed like the perfect blend of skill, craftsmanship, and precision. I enjoy the process of transforming raw materials into something useful, and welding allows me to work with different materials and technologies. I believe it's a stable and rewarding career, and I'm eager to contribute my skills in a professional setting.
That's great. Now, can you tell me about the different welding processes you have been trained on? How did they differ from one another?
Yes, I'm familiar with several welding processes. MIG, metal inert gas, welding. This process uses a continuously fed wire electrode and is ideal for thin to medium metals. It's relatively easy to learn and is fast, making it great for production work. I've used MIG for welding steel and aluminum. TIG, tungsten inert gas welding. TIG welding is more precise and gives a cleaner finish, which is why it's used for welding materials like stainless steel and thin metals. It requires a lot of skill, especially in maintaining a consistent arc. Stick welding, SMAW. This process is used for heavier metals and outdoor work. It's more forgiving in windy conditions and can be used on rusty or dirty materials. However, it can leave slag, so post-weld cleaning is often necessary. Flux cord arc welding, FCAW. I've also worked with FCAW, which is similar to MIG welding, but with a flux cord wire that makes it ideal for outdoor welding, especially in windier conditions.
Excellent. It's important to have a variety of skills in this field. Now, welding requires a lot of attention to detail. Can you explain how you ensure the quality and accuracy of your work?
Absolutely. I always start by thoroughly preparing the material, ensuring it's clean and free of contaminants like rust or grease. I make sure that the joint is properly aligned and the fit-up is perfect. Accuracy is key, so I always double-check my measurements and make sure I'm working within the right parameters for the type of metal I'm welding. While welding, I would keep my focus on the task at hand, staying steady and maintaining proper technique. After the weld, I inspect the finished work for any defects like cracks, undercuts, or porosity. If needed, I would perform additional tests like ultrasonic or X-ray inspection to ensure the weld meets all the required standards.
That's excellent. Now let's talk about safety. What are the key safety precautions you follow when working with welding equipment?
Safety is always my #1 priority. Some of the key precautions I follow include wearing protective gear. I always wear a welding helmet with proper shading, gloves, flame-resistant clothing, and boots. This protects me from sparks, UV radiation, and intense heat. Ventilation. I ensure that I work in a well-ventilated area to avoid inhaling harmful fumes. If needed, I use a respirator or local exhaust system to keep the air clean. Inspecting equipment. I inspect all welding tools and equipment before use, ensuring that they are in proper working condition. This includes checking the cables, gas connections, and electrode holders. Fire prevention. I keep a fire extinguisher nearby and ensure that the work area is clear of any combustible materials. I also make sure to turn off equipment when not in use. Lockout/tagout procedures. If I'm working on any machine that needs maintenance or repair, I follow proper lockout/tagout protocols to ensure no one accidentally starts the machine.
It's good to see that you're aware of the safety protocols. Now, in welding, you sometimes encounter defects in materials. Let's say you notice a crack in a metal piece you're about to weld. How would you deal with that?
If I spot a crack or defect, I wouldn't proceed without first assessing the situation. I would inspect the crack closely to determine the severity. If it's small and can be welded over, I would clean the area thoroughly and grind the crack out before starting the welding process. However, if it's a large defect, I'd discuss it with my supervisor or senior welder. It's essential to either repair or replace the defective part to ensure the integrity of the final product. Welding over a defect without addressing the underlying issue could lead to further problems down the line.
Good approach. Let's move on to teamwork. Welding is often done in teams. How do you handle working in a team environment?
I believe that good communication and collaboration are essential in a team. If I'm working with others, I make sure to clearly understand the project requirements and discuss any concerns with the team members. I'm always open to learning from others and sharing any tips or techniques I've picked up during my training. I also know that each team member brings their own strengths to the table, so I try to work together to maximize efficiency and ensure the project is completed on time without compromising quality. If there's any disagreement or challenge, I believe in resolving it professionally and calmly to keep things moving smoothly.
That's a great attitude. Since you're a fresher, how do you plan to improve your skills in welding and grow in this field?
I believe in continuous learning and improvement. I plan to take on more complex projects over time to challenge myself and gain hands-on experience. I also want to continue expanding my knowledge of different welding techniques and materials. Additionally, I'm interested in obtaining further certifications that may open up more opportunities in specialized areas, such as pipe welding or underwater welding. I also hope to learn from my colleagues and mentors in the industry, as they can provide valuable insights and tips.
It sounds like you're very committed to growing in the field. Finally, what would you say sets you apart from other candidates?
I believe my passion for the trade and my commitment to safety and quality set me apart. Even though I'm a fresher, I've always approached my training with a strong work ethic and a desire to learn. I'm not afraid to ask questions when I'm unsure, and I take responsibility for my work. I'm also adaptable and open to learning new skills and techniques as the industry evolves. I think my attention to detail and willingness to improve would make me a valuable asset to your team.
Thanks again for being here, James. Let's continue with some more specific questions. Welding is often done under challenging conditions. Can you talk about how you handle working in extreme weather or difficult environments?
Definitely. I understand that welding often takes place in outdoor or challenging environments, especially for construction, pipelines, or repair projects. When working in extreme weather, such as rain or high wind, I make sure to adjust my technique and ensure I have the right equipment. For instance, if I'm welding outside on a windy day, I would opt for a welding method like flux cord arc welding (FCAW), which is more tolerant of wind. I also make sure to protect the weld area from moisture and dirt, as these can affect the quality of the weld. In cold weather, I keep the work area dry and warm enough to prevent cracking in the metal. Overall, I prioritize safety and quality, ensuring I follow proper procedures and use the right techniques despite the environmental challenges.
That's a great answer. What about welding in tight or awkward spaces? Welding sometimes requires working in positions that are hard to maintain for long periods.
Welding in tight spaces is definitely challenging, but I've been trained to adapt. When working in confined areas, I make sure that I'm using the appropriate equipment, like smaller torches or adjustable clamps, so I can reach the work area effectively. To reduce discomfort, I also take breaks when necessary to avoid fatigue and strain on my body. For example, when welding in overhead positions, I focus on maintaining good posture and balance, which helps me to keep my movements smooth and consistent. I understand that working in difficult positions requires patience and precision, and I'm willing to make adjustments to ensure the job is done safely and correctly.
It's good to hear that you're thinking ahead about comfort and safety in those situations. Now, let's say you're working on a job with a client or a supervisor who has specific expectations about the final result. How would you handle a situation where those expectations seem unrealistic?
That's a great question. If I'm in a situation where the expectations seem unrealistic or unclear, I believe it's essential to communicate effectively. I would first ensure I fully understand the expectations by asking clarifying questions. If I feel that the deadline or the quality standards are too high to achieve with the resources provided, I'd speak with my supervisor or the client early on to discuss potential solutions. For example, I might explain the challenges I'm facing, whether it's due to material constraints, tight deadlines, or specific technical limitations, and propose alternative solutions such as adjusting the timeline, or using a different welding process. Open and honest communication is key to finding a solution that meets the client's needs while also maintaining safety and quality standards.
That's a very professional approach. Sometimes things go wrong and we need to troubleshoot. Can you talk about how you approach a situation where you notice a defect in a weld during the process?
If I notice a defect during the welding process, I don't hesitate to stop and address it immediately. I understand that defects can compromise the structural integrity of the weld, so it's crucial to resolve issues as soon as they're noticed. I first analyze the cause of the problem, whether it's related to the welding technique, machine settings, or the material itself. For example, if I notice porosity or a lack of fusion, I'll inspect the gas flow or check for contamination on the metal surface. After identifying the cause, I'll correct it by adjusting the settings or re-preparing the surface before resuming the weld. If the defect is significant, I may need to grind out the affected area and re-weld it. I also document the issue and the steps I took to fix it, as it helps in keeping track of any recurring problems and communicating effectively with the team.
That's a thorough approach. You mentioned machine settings. How familiar are you with welding machine calibration? And how do you ensure the machine is set up correctly before starting work?
I'm very familiar with welding machine calibration. Before starting any work, I always perform a thorough check on the machine to ensure it's properly calibrated and ready to go. This includes checking the voltage and amperage settings based on the material type and welding process I'm using, inspecting the wire feed mechanism for consistency and smooth feeding to avoid issues like bird nesting or wire tangling, verifying gas flow settings to ensure the proper shielding gas is being used and the flow rate is within the required range, inspecting the cables and electrodes to ensure they are in good condition with no signs of wear or damage. I also review the machine's manual for specific troubleshooting steps and use that as a reference if something doesn't seem right. If everything checks out, I proceed with a test weld on a scrap piece of material to verify the settings before moving to the actual workpiece.
It's good that you do a pre-check before getting started. Now, working under pressure is inevitable in welding, especially when dealing with tight deadlines. How do you handle stress or situations where there's a risk of delaying the job?
When facing stress or a looming deadline, I try to remain calm and focused. I break down the tasks into smaller, manageable steps to ensure that I'm not overwhelmed. Prioritizing safety and quality is always my first priority, but I also keep an eye on the clock to stay on schedule. If I foresee that I might fall behind, I communicate with the supervisor or team early on so they are aware of the situation. I may ask for additional support, whether it's in the form of an extra set of hands or additional equipment, to help speed up the process. Additionally, I use techniques like setting mini-goals within the workday to track my progress and make sure I stay on course. Staying organized and focused helps me manage stress and maintain productivity without sacrificing the quality of my work.
That's a great approach to managing stress. Let's talk a bit about customer satisfaction. How do you ensure that your work meets the client's expectations and that they are happy with the final result?
Customer satisfaction is important to me, and I always strive to ensure that the work I do meets or exceeds their expectations. First, I make sure to understand the client's needs and project requirements, asking detailed questions if necessary to clarify their vision. During the welding process, I keep the client or supervisor updated on the progress and address any concerns they may have immediately. If the project requires specific tolerances or aesthetic considerations, I double-check those details throughout the process to ensure they're met. Once the welding is complete, I do a final inspection to ensure the welds are clean, secure, and structurally sound. If the client wants to review the work, I walk them through the results, explain the process, and make sure they are satisfied with the outcome. If there are any adjustments or minor issues, I'm open to feedback and make the necessary corrections to ensure the client is happy with the final product.
It's clear that you understand the importance of customer satisfaction. Finally, why do you believe you would be a good fit for this welding position? And how do you see yourself contributing to the team?
I believe I'd be a great fit for this position because I'm passionate about welding and dedicated to producing high-quality, safe work. Even as a fresher, I bring a strong work ethic, a willingness to learn, and a commitment to safety and precision. I'm also very adaptable and work well in both independent and team settings. I can contribute to the team by maintaining a positive attitude, ensuring that projects stay on track, and constantly striving to improve my skills. I'm ready to take on challenges and contribute to the success of the team, learning from experienced colleagues while also sharing any insights I've gained from my training.
Thank you for your detailed responses, James. It was a pleasure speaking with you. We'll be in touch soon regarding the next steps.
Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak with you today. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day.